everyone out there in Facebook world and the podcast world. You are listening to or watching the Service Business Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Tersh Blissett. Today, I'm excited because we're going to talk about recruiting with Hugh Gallagher. And it's really cool because, I don't know, we had Hugh and we were introduced by Wayne Herring. And if you don't know Wayne, he's a great guy. And I think it might have been, was it a book club? I think
it was book club.
Yeah, book club. We're kind of nerds, but
say it all the time.
But it's really cool because when we're doing these small mastermind groups, we kind of meet and become friends with people on an intimate level that are business owners, not necessarily in the same industry, but we really can help each other out in a lot of ways. And that's very true with Hugh and everything that he has going on, because he has the Gallagher search group, and they do recruiting and really help you find top talent in a time whenever it's hard to find, especially for us in the trades. I'll tell a little backstory before I let Hugh talk and introduce himself and everything. Mainly because my ADD will probably kick in and I'll never tell about this part.
Also talk about that all the time.
So last year, about this time last year, maybe a little earlier in the year, we had every intentions of bringing on more service technicians. And it was a time where we had a few people who wanted to work. We had done a couple of interviews, but nothing like really set in stone. And then we just hesitated on pulling trigger. And this was about April, March, April-ish. Well, everything that was going on in March, we really didn't know what to expect. And it was really a scary time for a lot of people because we didn't know, should we hire somebody? What happens if we get shut down and we hire someone and then all of a sudden we're responsible for it? It was just a really terrifying time for a lot of business owners. And that uncertainty really created an issue with us for whenever we were actually ready to pull the trigger, and we knew like, hey, the calls are still coming in, like we're not getting shut down, we're considered essential. It was too late at that time, so we were running way short staffed, and so this year we foresaw the same situation. So we knew that the workload was going to come up. So we actually ended up doubling up. So we had 2 guys in each van for a short period of time because we just didn't want to get caught with our pants down again, I guess is the best way to say it. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. Like, I feel like if you wait until you need, some good talent, you're behind the 8 ball by a long shot. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And we're going to talk about how to, stay on top of recruiting and making sure you're recruiting the top talent in your industry and that kind of stuff. But with all of that being said, with the world's longest introduction, welcome to the show, Hugh.
Thanks, Tersh. Really excited to be here. This is pretty cool. I've done probably about a dozen or so podcasts with different people, different areas, different industries. And it's always fun to have an opportunity to talk to different folks about it, because it is, you hit the nail on the head. It is critical, and you need, they use that expression, build your bench. You always have to be able to say if someone's gone, we got to slide them in, and there's no one that's irreplaceable. And you can't, like you said, get caught with your pants down and say, well, this guy will never leave me. Well, that's true until he does.
Exactly.
And for, I think our parents' generation, there was this world of lifetime employment and people with gold watches and 40 years at one place. And again, certainly it still exists in small instances, but largely, people are ping-ponging around up their career. And as such, the employer has to be as responsive as the candidates, because they're managing their career. You've got to kind of manage your business with that understanding that if you get, we run into situations sometimes where we get people that are perceived to be older, like me, and I'm in my I'm 54, so I guess that's mid 50s, but someone looks at a guy like me and the guy's worked 30 years or what have you, he's out of school, and he's, well, I don't know how long he's going to stick around. Dude, if you get someone for 5 years, that's the best investment you're ever getting.
Yeah. So what would you say the average, what would, with you saying that, what would you say the average time that people are spending on one job? I mean, is it true that every 18 months people are searching for a new job?
If not searching, they may make themselves open to a conversation. The bulk of what we do is, I think there's a perception that we get jobs for people, and I guess that's partly true. Mm-hmm. But we're generally looking for passive job seekers for our clients. These are people that are employed, they're happy, they're successful, they're productive, they're doing what they're doing, but for whatever reason, when we speak to them, they're open to hearing about other opportunities. Okay. There's some sort of, we call it a breach going on with their own employer or that career path or what have you there, that they're saying, well, tell me more. I might be interested when you present an opportunity to them. And so yeah, I don't know that they're actively looking per se every 18 months, but I believe that's probably an accurate number for when they might start fielding calls and at least hearing people out, seeing what's out there.
So that's the end of the quote unquote honeymoon stage. Like they're not that euphoria of the new business working for a new person anymore.
Sure. Well, at the end of the day, it's still work, and you either love it or you don't love it. And arguably you can love it anywhere, but you could also not love it anywhere. So, I mean, it's a challenge to keep people happy. This world is different. I think we were talking off air before we went live that, there's a whole lot of things people learned in the last year. And that doesn't mean they're not going to make those mistakes again. It's just they're a little more aware that the mistakes are mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get too deep into this, tell us a little bit about you, your background, sure. and the Gallagher Search Group in general.
Yep, sure. So I started working in the recruiting industry in 1995. So I'm definitely dating myself a little bit here. And, I joke because I've done training seminars and stuff with younger recruiters, and I talk about fax machines and people and curly paper fax, and people look at me like I have three heads. You've got these 20-something sitting in there, and I talk about the ring of a fax machine, getting excited about it. And, I learned the business. I work for a firm in like a small boutique firm in suburban Philadelphia. And, I learned the business from guys that, their generation, they were in downtown, they were in Center City, Philly, and they would interview a candidate and physically take a resume, run it across town because they were competing with their other recruiting competitors for speed. It's the first referral gets honored. Yeah. So they would physically have to take a resume and go run it down to a client and say, just met with this guy, he's great, you should get him in here type deal. And when you say these things to people, they're like, are you crazy? Like, you just email it, and it's just different. It's a different era. We didn't have really the internet, like it existed when I started, but it wasn't widespread. Personal computers weren't widespread, so I mean, when we would, the jobs section, the career section of the Philadelphia Inquirer was 20 pages long every Sunday. And now I don't even know if they have a section. Just
you didn't have a Craigslist or anything like that.
Yeah, it's just been crazy how the industry's evolved. So I worked down there for a few years, and then I joke that I discovered I could sit at a desk and talk on the phone without driving 65 miles each way. And so I had a long run up here with a company and really helped build that up. And we were super, super successful, and ended up going through some personal stuff, and then kicked around a couple places short term, which was not my MO ever.
Yeah.
Anyone. And my wife said to me, "This is ridiculous. Why are you giving someone half a paycheck? We're starting our own company." And I'm like, "What?" And it's been just about 8 years. We've made a good run of it. We've been really, really successful. We're both really well networked, and that really helps because I think there's a perception that, you get a job for an HVAC tech, mm-hmm. and you just go in the drawer. I'm going old school again. You just go pull it up on a database, and here's 20 people to call and get. That's just not really the case. You may have 20 people to call. We don't know if any of them are looking. You don't know if any of them, it's somewhere to start with. So when we're talking and meeting with new clients and they're telling us about what they need, the gears start going right away. All right, my short list to start. I'm not saying any of these people are candidates, but to ask, who should I be talking to? And that's really our job, is we're talking to one person. Tersh gives me Mary, Mary gives me Bill, Bill gives me Joe, Joe gives me Jim. And now Jim might be a real candidate, and it's,
Gotcha.
But we're chasing people in the right space to further refine and dial in on what the clients are looking for their hires.
So tell me a little bit about, like, what happens, like, for now. So we are fully stocked. We're good to go. Actually, I'll rephrase that. 3 weeks ago, we were fully stocked. I mean, like, we had all of our technicians. We were good to go for the summer. And then one of my guys put in a 2 weeks notice, or a 3 weeks notice. Heck, it's probably been a 4 weeks notice by now, but it's just a not leaving on disgruntled terms, moving closer to family type thing, moving out of state type situation, for personal reasons. And so now we have kind of a vacancy opening up. In my scenario, we've been doing Zoom calls. We've been doing hiring events we were doing them 2 times a week for a long period of time. So I have basically my metaphorical drawer of applicants who have gone through the process. Should I still continue to do hiring events? Should I still continue to be reaching out to these individuals, even though, like, we're pretty much stocked and we have a full staff? And, like, we probably were overstaffed a couple weeks ago, but I also fear going into the busiest season, because we all know, like, if you're in the air conditioning industry, it seems like no matter how many people you have on staff, you still need 2 or 3 more. Do I go ahead and dive back into that drawer of applicants and start going through that interview process again for their 3rd or 4th interview? Or do you think that I should just kind of ride it out a little bit and see if the load comes? Or what's kind of your opinion on that? I mean, it's kind of a loaded question in so many ways, but
it is a loaded question a little bit. And, there's the concept of overhiring, which I guess is where you're going. It's easy to do when it's someone else's money.
True.
It's real easy to do then, but you have a situation where you don't know. I think there's been a big push in the recruiting space, more internal recruiters than third party, which is what I do, but more internal staff recruiters that the consultants in the recruiting industry have been talking about candidate experience. And what I would say to you relative to that is that don't waste anyone's time. If you're going to put someone through a 3rd or 4th interview, you better be pretty serious about eventually bringing them on board. You can't keep kicking tires, because there's nothing more frustrating than that on a candidate side. You get someone excited and then you go cold, or you go even lukewarm, and the wheels stop moving forward. So now they start having second doubts about you. And when you're ready, it's going to be harder for you to close that person.
So tell me, describe to me what going cold or even lukewarm means.
Well, you're hiring HVAC techs.
Mm-hmm.
How many interviews are you going to have?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, an exhaustive interview process is going to be 3 or so. Beyond that, it's either we're hiring you or we're not hiring you, and it's tough. And a lot of people, there's been 20 books written about, difficult conversations, but it's a hard bridge to cross to say, love you, don't have space for you. Well, then why'd you waste my time interviewing? So like,
Yeah.
you're walking a real thin line. That's why I'm saying, if you're going to go back into that well, I'm not saying, look, if you got 2 or 3 people you really liked and you maybe bring it on one, then yeah, go through it with the 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go through it with 10.
Okay.
Because some of those 10 may ultimately be hireable by you, but you don't want to burn the bridge.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You want to keep yourself as an employer in good light with them. It's sometimes no news is no news.
Yeah.
They hear from you, you get excited, and then it doesn't work out. And you're like, what the hell happened with them?
Right. So that's the follow-up process is one that I've kind of struggled with myself personally. And it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I really like that guy, or I really like that gal. And then I do another hiring event and I'm like, oh, I really like that one. And so then I kind of, I continue conversations with this individual over here, whereas I've left this person over here on, that I did the first hiring event with, I left them high and dry in a way, because I never did a proper follow-up. I mean, I did say, like, if you're going to be hired, or if you're considered to be hired, you'll hear from us. But at some point, like, how do you, I guess, what's the best way for me to phrase a conversation with someone, or like an email, or should it be a phone call? Like, to say, I'm not done with you, but I like this guy better.
Well, and that's fair. I think honesty is a good approach here. And if you genuinely do like this person, if this person is deemed by you ultimately hireable, but not hiring right now,
yeah,
tell them. We love you. I just met this other person, blew us away. Like, it was everything. I was planning on moving forward with you, and I'd still love to move forward with you at some point. But right now, we're going to go in this direction. But I'd love to keep the lines of communication open with you. And, when we have an opening again, I'd love to revisit it with you. And I think, in as much as it's bad news, it's honest news, and it's easier to process than the no news.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So at least it's some news. But do you ever feel like being open and honest with someone is such a unnatural thing in our society today that they're like, oh yeah, whatever, you're blowing smoke? Or do you think that it could possibly, even though you're being honest, it could burn the bridge? Like, why'd you waste my time if that guy's better than me? Like, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, in the best explained circumstances, there's times where I'm like, just the stars didn't align here. And if they're upset and I've tried my best, is it okay to write them off, or say, look, you weren't a good fit if you didn't understand that anyways? Or do I need to look internally and say, hey, look, I dropped the ball on that and I need to do it better in the future?
Well, and I think kind of all the above. I think obviously self-reflection goes a long way, and few people do that. I think sometimes people's reactions to what are realities gives you a lot of insights onto what you're getting.
That's a good point.
Sometimes you're better off finding out. Not that you go into it for that reason. You're not putting some phony story up to see how they react to it. But in a genuine situation, if they react poorly or don't conduct themselves professionally, how are they going to work under any level of pressure while you're employing them?
That's what I was going to get at. So, like, you have a late afternoon service call, and it's just an emergency. We are in the service industry. We are in the industry of providing amazing service to clients. And you get upset because the situation's changed or it's not what you expected. That's going to make it difficult for the entire team every time that happens. If it ever, it's not something that happens every day, but when it does happen,
sure,
it's going to be a difficult.
But it's not rare either. It's fairly common in your world because of what you do.
Yeah. People get home from work and their air conditioner isn't working. Their house is hot. They don't get home from work at 2:00 in the afternoon. It's right. Unfortunate that they get home at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's when we get a call that comes in. So yeah, I'm with you 100% there. Have you ever found, or do you know, is there a magic question that you just asked that's like, all right, that was that answer just, yeah, you're hired, or that tells me a lot about your personality?
Yeah, I don't know so much a magic question, but I think you can, obviously, the more open-ended questions, the better. You
Mm-hmm.
want these people to talk. You want an interview to be more conversational than I ask, you answer. But I think you can tell when you start painting a picture and they start filling in the details, you can tell what that alignment is.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily have to be one magic bullet question to hone in on that, but you can see that. And again, I understand Zoom is necessary a lot right now, but in person, you're going to see the nonverbal stuff too. You're going to see them, leaning in. I hate that phrase, but physically leaning into a conversation as they get more excited,
Yeah.
and as they're buying into what you're talking to them about. So you're going to see what that alignment, what that interest is, and that stuff you can't coach that. That's real. That's
Mm-hmm.
going to be genuine.
Yeah, because I, really struggle with the just the typical question of like, tell me about a situation that you've been in that was bad at work, that you solved the problem. Because that, I don't know, I struggle with any of your traditional questions that you have, quote unquote traditional questions. And because they're so rehearsed sounding, because people are so used to being asked those types of questions. um, I'll tell you, in our Zoom meetings, this is how it goes. All right. So everybody they get a link to a Zoom hiring event. It's not called a hiring event. It's just a Zoom interview. And when they come on the Zoom, it's typically between 15 and 20 people on the Zoom at the same time. And so at, let's call it 4 o'clock on a Wednesday, I hit the admit all button, and then all of a sudden 15 or 20 people pop up in a Zoom, and everybody's looking and they're like, is this a joke? Am I getting pranked here? What's that old show that used to be on come on TV where they'd prank each other? I've had people ask if that's what the case was. And very quickly in the introduction, Julie and I are on there, and we say, hey, I'm Tersh. Don't jump off the screen. Yes, we're hiring multiple positions. So you may be applying for a service technician position, and the person that's in the box right next to you might be an inside sales or outside sales, or this is a very generalized hiring event, and really we just are just asking questions and interacting with you, and just so you see how we interact, because we're 100% remote company. We operate remotely, and so we're over Zoom a lot, and we operate over video a ton, and we just want to be very open and honest with you. We go through our pillars and our core values and stuff like that, and then I do a round robin where I ask the same 4 questions, and I do it like up front, like these are the 4 questions I'm going to ask you, so you can be prepared for whenever I get to you. Basically, it's your name, where you basically live, or your area where you're from, and your background, a little bit of background and history of you, how you stand out in the group. So how would you stand out in this group of 20 people? What makes you different from these 20 people here? And then what are you going to bring to the table as far as our business? Like what's different about you that's going to bring to the table? It's kind of like the standout thing too, but something different that's going to bring to the table. And then the last question is always, when you think of your childhood, what smell comes to mind? And that's always that question always throws people off instantly, and people joke about it, but it's the icebreaker, and it's the conversation that really keeps the conversations going too. There's been multiple times where people have applied for a job with us. We've gone through the hiring process, and they applied for a service technician position. They didn't really have any experience as a service tech, but after the hiring event, they were like, I don't care where you put me, just put me somewhere in your company, because I just like y'all. Y'all are cool people. Like, I just enjoy the atmosphere. It's the most memorable hiring experience that I've ever had. And even if it's not to be a service tech, just stick me somewhere and I'll move into a service tech's position. I like you and your company. And so a lot of that feeds back to like people saying, I remember my grandma's cooking and I won't tell my wife this, but her cooking is much better than my wife's, but and stuff like that. And so it really helps break the ice with all of the people in the group. And I typically will pick on the person that doesn't have their camera on first, because that's one of the things we always go through is say, hey, look, make sure your camera's on, make sure your name's right. Because if your name's not right on there, I'm going to pronounce it however it is. Like if it's a bunch of numbers, I'm going to try and say numbers as your name. So I just try and make it really light because it's a tense situation. And anytime I've ever been in an interview, which the thing about it is I can't really put myself in the same their shoes, because I've really only done 2 job interviews my whole life, pretty much. I mean, and that was a long time ago. So like, I can't physically relate to them exactly the same way. I try and think about it, but I knew that it's awkward. So I'm trying to make it really easy and uplifting and that type of stuff. But what kind of feedback would you give based on, kind of what I said there? Obviously.
I like it. I think you're winding in the important stuff. Why should I hire you? Like that's basically what an interview is.
Yeah.
This is who we are. We're going to give you a little infomercial on us,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
who we are, what we do, and what we're looking for. And then it's why should I hire you? What makes you special? What makes you unique? What makes you different? And I love the childhood smell question, because as cliched as it sounds, you're sprinkling in some culture.
Yeah.
You're when you have people coming away saying, you guys are pretty cool, that's where you want it to be. And cool is relative.
Exactly.
There are certain people that are gonna be like, what the hell? And that's okay, but they're not going to fit with you then.
Exactly.
So again, better to know that ahead of time.
Exactly.
So no, I like it. I think you're really barking up the right tree. And I think people sometimes overcomplicate things. There's only so much you need to go over for certain positions.
Yeah, I already have their resume. I've already printed out their resumes, so I know their basic qualifications and I know their job history typically. So it's more of a conversation. Are you going to get along with us? And please understand that even though we're remote, like we still have family days, we still have quarterly events where we come together and do stuff together, type stuff.
Well, I tell candidates all the time, like when a client has already scheduled an interview with you, they've already looked on paper and said, there's a reasonably good shot this person can do what I need them to do.
Right.
Or they wouldn't be wasting their time.
Exactly.
They've already come to that conclusion. Now it comes down to, do I like them? Will they fit in with what we're doing? Can I see them working here? Can they see themselves working here? I don't want to say the kind of get to know you stuff. Yeah, you want to dial in a little bit to skill sets and what contribution they can actually make. Mm-hmm. But how's this going to work for everyone? Is this going to work out? Or are you a diva? Are you going to be, not worth the squeeze, as they say? Mm-hmm. It just, some people are that way. They're very talented, but it's not worth the aggravation. And maybe during the interview that comes up. So,
how do you, as you're doing this and you're finding people, how do you avoid hiring the diva? Or maybe we do need a diva. Like how do you have that conversation with me as a business owner to say, what do we need here? Like, what are you looking for exactly? Because sometimes, I'm gonna rephrase that, a lot of times the words that come out of my mouth are not the words that are in my head. Like it's like, this is what I need, but this is what I say I need. So how do you get to that reality? And then, because man, that would be a huge time suck and a waste for you and me both if you're constantly giving me the wrong people because I'm giving you bad information.
Sure. And absolutely on point. We unfortunately go through this a lot more than I wish. But I sit down with a new client, I'll say, and they'll give me a job description of whatever they're looking for. And I'll say, all right, I see what you're looking for. Now tell me what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
and give them that opportunity. Now, sometimes, Trish, you don't know until they start interviewing what they're really looking for.
Mm.
You know, you've looked at something and there's a list of things. And now maybe we've reordered them when we had a conversation about it. Well, now maybe when they go into an interview with a candidate, maybe it gets reordered again.
Yeah.
You know, maybe something that we thought in the 2 prior reviews of what you're looking for was fairly low, but now it's a sticking point. If that's not there, we're not moving forward. Oh, okay, well, let's move that up. You know, had we known that, we could screen better. And yeah, it's frustrating. Yes, it's a waste of time, but it normally only happens at the beginning of new relationships, because as time passes, you get better attuned with, well, they say this, but I know what they're looking for. You know, I know what they mean.
That's what I was going to ask. So do you find that it's like the second or third hire before you have like, okay, we're kosher, we're good with each other, you know what you're picking up what I'm laying down type scenario?
We had I had a meeting just yesterday with a client that we've struggled a little bit out of the gate with, and he's got a great company. They're doing very, very well, and we've had some offers that just haven't come together for them. And it was a really productive meeting where we kind of pulled back and said, all right, I'm going to spend some time with some of his people.
Yeah.
Talk to them a little bit about it, you know, and just kind of get under the hood. I hate all these stupid business cliches, but you know, it get with some of their people so that the one guy, yeah, he's the owner, but if he's not working with these folks day in and day out, you know, that's his opinion matters, but it doesn't matter that much. You know, like
totally.
He's writing the check, but aside from that, how are these people playing with others? And you know, do they fit? And are they team players? And are they energetic? And are they, you know, are they professional to your customers? You know, sometimes you can have the most sound technician, but if they're a jerk to people, man, I don't know. You know,
exactly. We run into that all the time. I mean, it's as a technician, and I have a technician mindset, first and foremost, and then it gets into the business owner side of things. It's very easy for that technician side to take over, and for me to get like into the weeds of the technical stuff and get out of my people personality type things. And, you know, I'm not saying that I'm bipolar or I have multiple personalities, but I kind of do. It's
no, but those things aren't right brain, left brain. They absolutely are.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, like I have to be very careful of, because when I'm hiring people, I have to make sure, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I have to make sure that they're good fit for the position, not a good fit to be my buddy or to, you know, be me, because I don't want people to be me. I want people to be really good at that position, because I'm hiring for that position because I don't want to do that position. Like if I'm hiring a bookkeeper, it's because I don't want to do the books. So if I hired somebody exactly like me, yeah, they might take the job and might be okay at doing bookkeeping, but eventually they want to get out of doing bookkeeping. So I want somebody who geeks out over bookkeeping, which is not me.
Completely understandable. And that's, you're hiring for fit, you're hiring for skill, and that's where you need to be. We joke all the time, I don't need any more friends. You know, we're doing okay with that. I need people that can do the job that we're paying them for. And yes, it'd be great if we're friendly. It'd be great if we get along, but we don't have to be buddies. We don't have to have beers after work. You know, we can, I'll ask how your family is and I'll be genuine about it. But if that's not your thing, all right.
That's cool. Yeah.
Go do your thing and we're good. You know,
so
don't need to overcomplicate this either.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's the problem that I ran into was I was trying to hire buddies for so long, like let's be pals, and I was trying to duplicate myself. And then I kind of came to the realization that if they're exactly like me, then they're probably my competition because they own their own business. You know, if they're the exact same person as I am, you know.
Well, it's funny. I was talking about, I had worked for this firm for, it was about 10 years here, and basically managed it. I was the number 2 guy. I ran sales, ran trading, and ran my own desk as well. And a lot of the time, the owner of the company, who's still a very good friend of mine, he'd hire these guys that played football for him. He was a high school football coach, and great guys, awesome to hang out with. I don't know if I'd have hired any of them, a couple maybe, but so now I'm in a position where I'm now training these guys and I'm managing these guys, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. One guy couldn't show up. Like,
Yeah.
like if you could get here by 10, that would be really awesome. Just
right.
I'm begging you, please try and get here by 10. Like everyone else is here at 8:30. If you could just show up remotely late, we're okay. But and it's live and learn. I think I truly believe he felt he was doing right by these people, but in doing right by those people, he wasn't doing right by the company.
100%.
And there was a lot more yield that probably we could have gotten out of it had we screened more for what can they do for us rather than what can we do for them. He was being very generous in bringing people on payroll that perhaps didn't belong there.
Yep. And I've been guilty of the exact same thing. And, could we have grown even more
being
last year?
Person, but it doesn't, sometimes good person doesn't really help good business.
Exactly. Yep. 100%. All right. So the last question that I have is typically what's the typical investment in using a service like what you have provided for us?
Sure. I mean, our fees are pretty much industry standard. We're our standard fees 25% of the hired individual's first year guaranteed compensation.
Okay.
So in simplest terms, if it's a $40,000 person, it's a $10,000 fee. So I mean that's. We're a small company. I don't have 10 layers of bureaucracy above me that I've got to pay tribute up to. So, I mean, we'll work with, we're a small business. We like working with small, mid-sized firms. So I don't want to say we'll negotiate. I don't negotiate against myself, but we'll work with folks. We want to help. If we say we'll work at a discounted fee of X, we'll work at a discounted fee of X. We're not going to work less because we're discounting it. It's one of those things where we just want to try and be fair with everyone and let people be excited about using us. I don't want to feel like people have a gun to their head to have to use us.
So the question I kind of have is, you mentioned their guaranteed rate. Is that right? The guaranteed rate of the individual. Does that not include like if they bonus or spiff or like upsell?
Typically, no. There are some firms that'll factor that stuff in, but because typically you don't know that in advance,
right?
It's hard. It's just a much easier number to come up with. Here's your base rate.
Yeah.
Take that over the course of the year. That's what that yields. If you make more money on top of it, fine. But we're not going to invoice on that. We're just looking at the base number.
Well, that's cool. That is cool. And to think about that, like some people may think, oh, I can put an ad on Indeed for free versus paying $10,000. But
go ahead.
Think about the amount of money that it costs you to hire. People just don't really associate how much it costs you to hire new individuals for a position. And that's a conversation we could have for hours.
Absolutely. And I think what you're hitting the nail on the head, but what you're also missing is what's the cost of a bad hire?
Yeah, that too.
What's the cost of a bad hire?
At least double the cost of a good hire.
A service rep, and now you start losing customers. What's that cost?
And if you're not doing checks and balances on that at the same time, it may go a year of you losing clients that you don't know about. Yeah. Oh yeah. I have some horror stories there on that one. So
I'm sure. I mean, everyone does. That's what makes it so easy to relate, because everyone's been through that. Everyone's had bad hires. You don't go into them thinking it's, we got a 50% divorce rate in America. You don't go into marriage saying I'm going to get out of it, but half of the people do. And, it's the same thing with employment. You start on a good foot, hopefully going in the same direction, but at some point, maybe it was really a bad move on both ends. And, the sooner you find that out, the better. And the most amicably you could separate, the better.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Hugh, where can people learn more about you, connect with you, have a conversation in depth?
Sure. Our website is gallaghergroup.us. Gallagher's GALLAGHER group.us. My contact information, my LinkedIn, all that stuff is on there. You can see active jobs we have working, the types of consulting projects we've done, training stuff we've done. So I mean, we do primarily recruiting, but I've also worked with organizations on helping get their recruiters to perform at a higher level.
Oh, cool.
So I mean, that's been really fun because
Yeah,
I've done it for years, and it's rewarding for the organizations because they start seeing a greater yield out of their investment. Their investment being, yes, in me, but in their employees.
yeah, 100%.
You see the employees now saying, "Oh, company's spending money to get me better. I'm going to stick around. I'm not going to take that other recruiter's call. You know, I'm going to these guys really." But it's crazy. But some of the retention initiatives people have had to get into, because it's such a tight labor market.
Mm-hmm.
You know, their hand's been forced. So the more you can do to show your employees the love, the better.
Yeah, 100%. Hugh, thank you so much for coming on the show and answering my questions and answering everybody else's questions that have popped up.
No worries. A great time. Thanks for having me, Tersh.
Absolutely. If anybody has any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to Hugh or myself. Obviously, reaching out to Hugh is going to be way better because he's going to be able to give you a lot more information than I will. If you have any questions about the way that I've done hiring events, don't hesitate to reach out to me. It's pretty simple. I have it. That workflow is pretty much automated 100%, at least 85% of the way. So don't hesitate to reach out about that as well. But with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful day and stay safe. And thank you again for listening to the Service Business Mastery Podcast. It is a podcast focused on service business owners, managers, and technicians who are considering becoming business owners themselves. With that being said, have a wonderful week and stay safe out there. See ya.